complete the survey. And moving on to our session of the day, future-proofing quality, the case of how like TMF and QMS works together in the age of AI. Donna, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Have a great session. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
So just a little bit of introduction. Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Donatella Ballerini. I'm head of eTMF services at Montrium. My background is in clinical development. I've been managing clinical trial in rare disease and neonatology for several years, focusing on documentation management, GCP compliance, and quality. But then my big passion and love for TMF took me in 2021 to Montrium, where I became head of eTMF services. And I also work as an independent GCP and quality consultant for pharmaceutical company to help them to implement quality management system or to assess their quality management system. I also like to write article on GCP quality and TMF, and so probably you will read some of my article in the web. But today we are here to talk about the strict relationship between TMF and QMS. So now I give the floor to Kim just to play a nice video. So I hope we still have people on the line, Kim. And I mean, you are in the right place. It's still a quality event, so don't worry. We are still talking about quality and TMF. But yes, that was a scene from Jurassic Park. So probably every one of you know the plot of the movie. But just to summarize, dinosaurs that are cloned by an ancient DNA by a group of scientists. Brilliant idea. The project work. At the end of the day, they really bring to life dinosaurs, but they failed. I mean, at the end of the day, it was really not a success, the project. There were really bad consequences. Probably if you have seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And why? Because essentially, they didn't think about what could go wrong with the dinosaurs in real world. They didn't think to critical quality factors. So essentially, the results was a disaster. And this is a little bit what happened in clinical trial when we don't think about what can go wrong. So if we want to talk today about quality, I think that we should start to define quality. What is quality? So quality is never an accident. It is always the result of high intention, sincere effort, intelligent direction, and skillful execution. So sometimes in clinical trial, it seems that we rely more on luck rather than strategy, but we can't, because from a regulatory perspective, we are asked to implement quality by design. So quality since the very beginning. So quality has to be intentional. And why quality is so important in clinical trial? Well, when you say quality, it's like a synonym on ensuring patient safety and patient right, or maintaining and guarantee data integrity, but also it means that you are following regulatory requirement and that you are in compliance with what inspector expect. And it means also have an operational efficiency framework that allows you to guarantee the quality of the service or of the product that you provide. So definitely it's very, very important to have quality in clinical trial. And if you go back to dinosaurs, it would have been more efficient to think about the consequences and the effect of having dinosaurs walking in cities of the present rather than try to escape and survive once the dinosaurs are already there. And the same principle apply to clinical trial. It means that it's better to avoid some issue rather than try to identify them and fix them quickly before an inspection. So it's really the principle of implementing quality since the very beginning, since the start. And it doesn't mean to design error-proof processes, because I think that everyone who works in clinical trial know that clinical trials are very unique and complicated, that it's almost impossible to predict and to avoid risk and issue. But you can have processes in place that allow you to avoid risk to become a serious issue, serious breach, or issue that need a big escalation. So you need to have processes in place that support a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. We need to move from a mindset that we want to go and try to fix, to find and fix the issue, but we want to try to avoid that risk to become an issue. And this is why quality very often is linked to risk management. Risk has something that has the potential to occur, while an issue is something that has occurred. We want to try to avoid the risk to become a real issue in clinical trial. This is why we need to have quality embedded since the very beginning. We can say that quality by design not just builds quality in, but also builds risk out. And I think that when it comes to quality, the very first and key element to have and implement quality in our clinical trial is to have strong and robust processes. So essentially what we know as SOP. Probably lots of people don't like SOP, especially because when you start your career in pharmaceutical company or life science environment, you have lots of SOP to read and to understood. But that said, definitely they are so important because they provide and bring lots of benefit. First of all, they ensure consistency and quality. If everyone knows the procedure and the steps to be followed, it's more probabilistic to have the same outcome, the same service, and the same level of product and documentation. It's also helpful because improved risk management, because if roles and responsibility and tasks are well defined and identified in SOP, we can reduce and minimize errors and so also risk. They can also be used as training tool during the onboarding. We know that onboarding is a very crucial aspect during also clinical trial management, and a robust SOP can definitely enhance the training process. And also increase the efficiency, obviously, because if we have a well-defined and robust process, we can reduce the waste of time and resources, and so to have definitely a more efficient and effective approach. And when it comes to SOP and so to processes, in a clinical trial, we know that we have lots of clinical trial processes. Think, for example, when you submit your clinical trial to a competent authority or to an ethics committee for having an approval. There's a specific process to be followed. Or think about when you have to approve the sending of a drug to a site. There are specific steps that need to be followed before sending the investigational product to the sites. So all these steps are part of a very specific and well-defined process. And TMF management is one of those processes in clinical trial. And the most common issue, or better, maybe mistakes that people do is that they consider TMF just at the end of the trial. And so they wish that the TMF at the end of the trial is inspection ready for any magic, support. But that is not the reality. TMF has a life cycle as the clinical trial. And so TMF has a setup phase, as a management and conduction phase, and also obviously the closure. So for each of these phases, the TMF, there are very specific TMF activities that support the quality of your trial master file. And these activities are part of very specific and different processes. So it's really like a sort of journey of quality that corresponds to the journey of TMF that doesn't start at the end of the trial, but it starts when the trial starts, so at the very beginning. So think about when you have to set up your TMF. There are different activities that you need to take into consideration, like, for example, define the expectation, define the roles and responsibility, especially when there are different vendors or stakeholders involved, define and develop your TMF plan, your TMF index, the list of the essential records. And this is, for example, a very critical aspect, because that list, or at least that aspect, will have an impact on the completeness and so on the story of your clinical trial. So how can I get that famous list? I mean, at the very beginning of your trial, you need to understand what are the essential records that I will expect to have in my TMF to be able to reconstruct the story of my clinical trial. And so to be able to provide evidence during an inspection that I was following the rules, that I was in compliance, that I was GCP compliant. So how can I get that list? Well, that is a very tricky part of the TMF management process, but you have very helpful guidance. For example, ICA GCP E6R3. In previous version, in R2, there was a list that, even if it was not exhaustive, it was anyway an indication. Now in R3, probably the list is more complete, but it's also open to have additional records, because we have the meaning of essential records that, say, provide flexibility in terms of what to put in the TMF and what not to find in the TMF. Essentially, what is essential for reconstruct the clinical trial story. And if you don't have enough of that reference, we have our TMF reference model that now with CDISC is becoming the TMF standard model. So definitely a very more complete and exhaustive list of records that have to be filed in the TMF that can help you to tell the story of clinical trial. But we have also additional information. We have company SOP and study plan, because if you think about them, they bring together the processes that you need to follow to manage the clinical trial. And at the end of the day, the outcome of a process is an artifact. So the TMF documents don't just tell the story of a clinical trial, they also reflect the processes that shape the story. There is this very strict interconnection between the story of the clinical trial and the evidence contained in the TMF. So I think that at this point, it's quite clear that the first point of interconnection between TMF and QMS is SOP. At the end, you can understand what are the records that needs to be found in the TMF based on the list of your SOP, because the artifact, some of the artifact will be required as evidence that you follow your SOP. So very important. In SOP, you can also find some parameters that can define the processes, and definitely that will help you to understand if you are in compliance with your process, but also with regulatory requirement. You can also use your SOP to configure clinical process model that help you to understand what are the expected artifacts at this stage of the clinical trial based on the milestone that I've just reached. And you can also evaluate the compliance of what you're currently doing thanks to the artifact in the TMF and what is written in the SOP. Last but not least, there's also an artifact, a specific artifact that is the list of SOP applicable for the study that is filed in the TMF, and that is a living document that can change. So obviously the interconnection between TMF and QMS would help a lot to have that living document always updated and ready for an inspection. But if SOP, in my opinion, are the main point of contact, again, because the evidence of a process is an artifact, and the process is the evidence that we have been follow regulatory requirement, and so these two elements work together. And to have a good story, you need to have them work very smoothly. That is not the only point of interconnection, I would say. So definitely there are other aspects. For example, kappa. If you think about kappa evidence, the slides have Kim, can you help me? I just see my face and not the slides anymore. So, okay, can you see the slides? Okay, perfect. So I was telling you about the slide, the additional point of interconnection between QMS and TMF. So think about a kappa. Majority of the time, the evidence that a kappa was closed is a document in the TMF. So that is another point of interconnection. Think about the fact that if your QA needs to plan an audit, then probably they need to apply a risk-based approach. And to apply a risk-based approach, they need the data and information from the TMF. So definitely that will help a lot for the audit planning. You can also help your QMS to improve their process framework, because without having the evidence of a process occurring at TMF, that can be the signal that maybe a process is not covered by an SOP, and so probably your QMS need to develop and implement a new process. You can have definitely information regarding previous inspection, previous audit, and so it's a sort of lesson learned that is a living lesson learned that you can use in preparation of inspection or future audit. And also change control. You can have change control history that definitely have an impact on the story of the TMF. So definitely there's additional point of interconnection. And yes, also training. If you don't have a learning management system, but for example, you need to be able to demonstrate that the people in your study team is trained on the processes, trained on the manual. Those information, need to be shared between QMS and TMF, because otherwise you will miss some important pieces of the story and some important evidence of the quality of your clinical trials. So it's really this, I would say, bidirectional and strict relationship between the two systems that make this approach an agile TMF, which means I don't consider my TMF just as a passive repository or just an archive that at the end of the trial must be filled with lots of documents, but it's really a living document. It's really a living tool that can help you not only to demonstrate compliance, but also to improve the quality of your quality management system. So it's really an exchange of data and information from one direction to the other that can really feed the other system. So it's really a different approach that really try to enhance the quality in your clinical trial management and so also in your trial master file management. And just to give you an example, think about a protocol deviation or a serious breach that occur at a site. Obviously, there will be a protocol deviation form or a template that need to be filed to track the protocol deviation. There will be a specific protocol deviation management process in the QMS, and all these artifact and events affect also the TMF, because obviously the site risk probably will increase, anyway will be impacted in the TMF. There are evidence of this quality issue that need to be filed in the artifact to provide evidence, like an audit certificate or a protocol deviation form, or maybe the protocol deviation log that must be updated. So there is an impact on this quality event that occur and is tracked in the QMS, but also tracked in the TMF with the evidence that the process was followed properly. And in the QMS, if you have the lesson learned for improvement, that means historical data for TMF-QC, because to provide, to do an effective TMF-QC, and so also to apply a risk-based QC, definitely all these data are part of those variables that can influence how to apply the risk and how to calculate the risk, and so how to define what to check. Unfortunately, the current landscape, despite this, let's say, probably so obvious, at least to me, interconnection between QMS and eTMF, is that they work in silos. So we have not just two systems that work in silos, but really even two great teams, the one from QA and the one from TMF, that work in silos. And they don't talk to each other. So that what means at the end of the day? It means that we have an increased level of risk, because there are not deviation, any breach, equality issue are managed into different systems by different teams. There's a lack of real-time oversight, because stakeholders don't have real-time visibility in what's going on, because you need to wait for the protocol deviation form coming from the QMS, going by email to the person that uploading the eTMF. So the process is quite slow and not efficient. The risk management approach is fragmented, because all the information and the elements that are necessary for me to evaluate the risk of my clinical trial are in different repositories and are not interconnected. So that is really a sort of inefficiency in the entire process, in the entire workflow, that also lead an efficient manual processes, because obviously you need to perform some manual reconciliation between the system and between the documentation that can lead obviously to errors and duplication. So definitely, as a reality where we have the integration between QMS and TMF will just bring benefit, in my view. It means to enhance inspection readiness, because the TMF will evolve and will be considered a living system and not an archive. We will increase operational efficiency, because with the integration, we avoid redundancy, and we will reduce manual oversight. And so people and resources will be able to focus just on critical to quality factors. We will have a proactive compliance, so we will be able to address risk early, and maybe we will be able to avoid escalation and try to improve the workflow and the processes. And now what you can do in practice today. I don't know if all of you know that in the TMF reference model, there is a specific column, it's one of the last one, that is called SOP reference. So essentially, it's a column where you can put for each artifact the reference to your SOP. So that is already a very, I would say, impactful and important step to start to integrate the QMS and the TMF, because that will provide you with the awareness of what are the artifacts, what are the records required by my company SOP. And so at the end of the day, what are the records that I need to have in my TMF to be able to tell a good story, to be able to reconstruct the clinical trial, and to be able also to show an inspector that I was following my internal processes. So if you do this kind of mapping, definitely that is already a big and important starting point. But what's the future? So if today, again, I see this integration very manual, unless obviously you have two systems that are already interconnected, the future definitely of integration is AI. Probably it's not a surprise that I'm telling you that it's AI, but I want to explain you why I see AI as a very as the key tool that can really enable us to have these two systems work together, improve the quality, and definitely provide us with the insight that right now or today are very challenging to get when you manage a clinical trial. So probably you have heard about AI agents. I see this AI element as a sort of the intelligent bridge that will provide us with the possibility to have someone that is taking information from one system and to the other and provide us with insight and with data, with analysis, with patterns that we can see, because essentially we can check all the documents, we can check all the records, and obviously we don't have all the time and the resources that would need to assess and do those checks. So definitely AI agents, I think that not one agent, but more than one agent with specific and well-defined task will allow us to have this interconnection between the two systems and having the ability to identify patterns across both systems and provide us with the data and information that we need to improve our strategy and so our quality. So just to provide you with an example, very, very basic, but just to give you an idea about what AI can do potentially with this integration. So let's assume that in the QMS something happened. Quality issue, I don't know, a kappa is developed, a protocol deviation, a serious breach. There's something that happened in the QMS. If through the AI integration, the AI will understand and will ingest the document created in the QMS. And this document, if necessary, obviously for the TMF, like for example, the audit certificate or the protocol deviation, will be then classified by AI automatically. So there will no need of download a copy, provide a copy through email, waiting for the person to upload and index the document and having maybe redundancy, delay, errors, but everything will be done in real time by AI. There will be an eTMF autofilling based on the metadata extracted, and another agent, a more I think that it's more an agentic AI, will have the capability to resonate about what's going on in TMF and also triggers notification if maybe there was a serious breach that, and maybe based on internal procedure, top management or head of quality needs to be notified. So the AI agent will be able to trigger this notification automatically. But not only, there will be agents that will analyze this data and will assess the risk based on this data. So I imagine that this interconnection will be done through different agents with specific tasks, specific roles and responsibility that will just allow us to have all this data in real time, having insight and having the analysis done in a faster way, providing the human in the loop, let's say, with more awareness about what's going on in the TMF. So I think that with this integration, we are going to go from data to unify intelligence. So we will be able to have a compliance that is more predictive rather than just try to react to something that is happening. We will have automated root cause analysis, because with all the data that the AI will be able to analyze, definitely we will have suggestion about what's going on and what the cause was. For example, the agents can understand that a person that is not following the process is the one that was not trained on that specific process. So maybe the root cause analysis is just lack of training. Real-time inspection readiness. Obviously, this will allow us to have real insight and real-time data information on what's going on from a quality perspective in the TMF without waiting for a manual integration. So I think that quality by design is not a methodology. I mean, it's an approach, definitely, it's a process, but it's really a mindset. So I think that what is relevant is that you have to create a culture of quality because definitely quality starts from the very beginning, as I told you before. So you can't wait for the end of the trial. Quality needs to start when the trial starts, and even before. You need to involve the different stakeholders. So TMF quality is not just a matter of a couple of teams or department. It's really cross-functional. So you need to have people that are involved and want to implement and embed quality through documentation, through evidence, and through processes. You need to identify what are the critical to quality factors in your processes and in your clinical trial management, and monitor them because they can change. So it's very important, once you have identified them, go on to monitor them and adapt your approach. So in that way, you can focus really on what really matters, on what really has an impact on the outcome of your trial, on the results of your trial, on the patient safety, and can make your process more effective and more definitely quality by design. So that was my last slide. Sorry for taking a little bit of time, but I'm open for the question.
Hello. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Donatella. This was absolutely amazing. We have some questions that have come in. I'm just going to stop sharing your screen over here. So, first question that I have to share with you today is from Olivier Petit. Hold on one second. Did you validate and or think about validation of your AI tool?
Yeah, so thank you so much, first of all, for your words, Olivier, and definitely we are validating any AI tool that we are using. And I mean, it's quite complicated, but just to let you understand, validation in AI is quite challenging because obviously it's not the traditional, the old approach of validation. Validation in AI is a dynamic validation because it's more like a sort of constant validation of your AI, and also it needs to be a validation that take into consideration some acceptable criteria and threshold that for other system are not applicable. So it's quite challenging, definitely, but it's part of our job, and it's part of the process to ensure that the outcome, even if there's always a human in the loop in the process, is reliable and accurate.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I also find very interesting with when we're talking about the whole AI discussion. It came up in a previous session where it's like AI is not meant to like replace us. You still need that human
No,
element
absolutely.
so it's very important, like, you can't beat them, join them, see how you can work and how it can help you work more efficiently and better, right? So I
Absolutely,
definitely feel that.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I have another question here. How can sponsors design QMS and TMF systems that communicate seamlessly, allowing automated quality signal detection without compromising data integrity or audit trails?
So I don't think that sponsor can design a QMS and TMF system. Probably that is in charge to vendors like Montrium or other vendors. I mean, we provide a system and we ensure that you can guarantee data integrity and you can have audit trail. But sponsor, what is in charge to sponsor is that they need to have the process in place, because I can provide you with a system and also with an AI tool that has audit trail. But if you don't have a process to manage that audit trail, I mean, the fault is yours, because you are responsible to ensure, to have a process in place to manage and ensure that integrity. Now, obviously, so for the creation of the system, we are in charge, but the process itself is in charge to the sponsor. So they should focus more on the process and also to people, because data integrity, for example, is something that starts also from people, from the knowledge of people of what data integrity is, and how can you ensure in your daily job activities the data integrity of what you are currently doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Donna. I did have a question over here. Could QMS and TMF be the same system? This person said, I think it would be easier and faster and a faster process than having that flow between two systems. So is that
So
possible?
I think that I received not this question, but a similar one a couple of years ago at a conference, and my answer is no, absolutely no. And I will provide you with the regulatory framework. A system needs to fit for a purpose. The purpose of QMS is not the purpose of the TMF. Even if they are interconnected, they were born, they were created for two different purposes, for two different reasons. So you can't use a QMS for managing the TMF and vice versa. But you need integration. You need to have this interconnection, definitely. That can be, again, probably nowadays it's more manual, but honestly, in the very next future, very close, I see that it will be so easy through AI, definitely, because they are both a source of precious data, and AI can work with those data simultaneously. So there's no need to have the just unique system, because it's up to the AI. Tell the AI where are the data source, and in this case, we will have two data source, QMS and TMF, but I think that we can add also CTMS and other system if we know that the information that are necessary for our evaluation, for our risk assessment, for our inspection readiness are in other system. So no, definitely they can't be the same, but they can't be the same for a regulatory requirement, because the system need to fit for purpose. So again, they are born with different purpose.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to lead into the next question from Deb Clancy. Seems that for true integration to work, all stakeholders, site sponsors, CRO, and other third parties all need to use the same TMF in real time. Currently, the stakeholders tend to be siloed when it comes to TMF integration. Do you have any ideas on how to bridge that gap and like bring them all together?
So I think that yes, to have the same TMF definitely is the ideal scenario. But even in my experience, unfortunately, the majority of the scenario is to have different TMF or a different solution for managing the documentation clinical trial. So what I see that is very effective in my experience is to have a robust and strong TMF plan in place, because whatever you're going to use, how many stakeholders you will have. If you have a well-established and defined process with roles and responsibility, with expectation, with milestone, with clear point of contact in the TMF plan, that will help a lot. Because what I see happening is that you have all these multiple stakeholders, different system, different procedure, and there's no clarity about who is doing what and what are the expectations, especially from a sponsor perspective. So the TMF plan is that tool that you can use to define all these aspects. And if you agree all these aspects with a different stakeholder, it will be, I will not say easy, but definitely better to manage the different aspects and stakeholder in this process.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Donatella. We're getting at time here, so I wanted to thank you for this wonderfully great, like, insightful presentation on TMF and QMS, coming together. And I want to thank the audience for their engagement. We got a lot of great questions in here. What we plan on doing on all the questions that we weren't able to get to, we will definitely try and get an answer for you either on social, or we'll reach out to you via email.